He gave a speech in the White House Rose Garden in which he was acknowledging, Trump's victory, and he was the most coherent, upbeat, borderline geeky that I have seen him since the last time he was sniffing a child. I will guarantee you that he and Jill Biden voted for Donald Trump.
100%, and they are so happy. Once the pressure's off, once you're criticizing the boss, it's much easier to do that than it is to actually take the helm yourself. And what's so great about Trump is that he relishes it, that he sees it as a duty. That I have to do this. It comes across in everything he does. And he's going to save America. America is going to save the West. America is going to lead the charge, the pathway, show us the way out of this. Because it is only with that brash, confrontational style against the satanic anti-humanists who are trying to take over the world that we get some normalcy back for our families and for our lives. So I can only see it getting better for the UK the more that America rejects the satanic evil of wokery.
Welcome to another episode of WTF, the world of Taunton and Fox, or the world according to Taunton and Fox, or the worlds according to Taunton and Fox, or what the Taunton and Fox. Yeah, I think that's what people mean when they say that. You know what I'm feeling today? I am in Colombia.
Colombia.
I'm a mule. They just duct the product on me and I just bring it back into the United States. But you know what I'm feeling today? That I'm proud to be an American. I know
I'm free.
It's the men who died who gave that right.
Gave that too many.
And up next to you and defend. How you doing, Plaza?
How am I doing? It seems that the Trump victory has brought quite a lot of good news everywhere. To the UK as well. So I wake up every morning to a video of him talking utter common sense, which I love. He's like, we're going to get rid of the Department of Education. It's gone. Finished. Going back to the States. We're going to imprison the people that chop off the children's mutilating the children. And we're going to investigate Big Pharma and make sure that these drugs are... people are going to jail. I mean, people are going to jail. He has declared an all-out war on woke. And it makes me so happy because, there's something quite frustrating in I don't know, I don't even know if I can call it my line of work. But whatever my line of work is, I'm still trying to work out. But it's at the moment I see it as kind of doomsday prophesying. It's so nice to see that, so many Americans... I always think about this idea of what they call a swing state. The idea that it's called a swing state because it swings to the candidate who is most wonderful. And all the swing states, try saying that fast. All the swing states swung to Trump, and he has come out of the box, out of the corner, punching, hasn't he? With I think Rubio as Secretary of State is great when he's like, you recorded? Good. Record this. Hamas is evil. We're going to wipe them out totally. And she's like, what about the 15,000 children? It's like, it's appalling and it's a tragedy. And I blame it entirely on Hamas. And then you've got the, what's his name? Noonan? Is that his name? I can't remember. The border chief. He's like, I got a message to you, those of you who illegal immigrants pack your bags. And I'm just thrilled. And I just, the lefty meltdown in Britain is a delightful thing to witness as well as a result of it. But you need strong, brilliant leadership, peace through strength. That's what the conservative way is. So I'm pleased.
I'm smirking my own sophomore humor. When I hear of swinging states, I can't help but like Owen Wilson and Vince Vaughn, that I even saw a headline that said that Wisconsin is the swingingest state. Apparently, lots of swingers in those states. It's hard not to be right now. The appointment he makes is causing the left to have a complete meltdown, which gives me the confidence that he's making the right appointments.
I think so. I think that I just think that these all of these things are like 80-20 issues, aren't they? I mean, even more when it comes to. I was very interested to hear the stat that the what really turned people in those swingingist states was the trans issue and the men and women's sports and all that sort of stuff. People are really pissed off with it. And it takes us back to the conversation I think we've had, which is that, MAGA is a cultural movement. It's not a political one. And therefore, this sort of radical return to common sense makes me think that we might get some normalcy. We had COVID. We had the total irrational fear of a bug for a couple of years, which destroyed the world and the way that we treated each other, and we othered each other and all that. So we had to recover from that. We then had Biden, who could barely string a sentence together, the poor guy, puppet mastered by Obama and the rest. And then we got this strange lady who just sat there and go, I believe that Americans are an optimistic people. They're a happy people. They're ambitious people. I'm like, yeah, but what do you stand on? I'm from a middle class family, and I
Worked at McDonald's.
Yeah, I worked at McDonald's. Like, go. I felt like sometimes you're in its darkest before the dawn, right? And that's what I sensed. I sensed maybe the dawn was arriving.
I wonder if you saw this. You're talking about Biden, not knowing where he is. He gave a speech in the White House Rose Garden in which he was acknowledging, Trump's victory, and he was the most coherent, upbeat, borderline geeky that I have seen him since the last time he was sniffing a child. He was so he you see it? It was funny. He virtually came out and was like, "Hey, everybody, see you there. All right, yeah, here we are in the Rose Garden." Kamala ran a great campaign. What a wonderful vice president she is. What a woman of outstanding character. But Trump won. That was kind of it. I was like, wow, he's got so excited. I will guarantee you that he and Jill Biden voted for Donald Trump.
100%. And they are so happy. They must be so happy that Joe's been forced to stand down, which is the fair thing to do. But also, you do notice another quality of, leadership. Rishi Sunak, who was until recently our Conservative Prime Minister, the minute he was out of office, he was quite good at Prime Minister's question times. So once the pressure's off, once you're criticising the boss, it's much easier to do that than it is to actually take the helm yourself. And what's so great about Trump is that he doesn't see it. He relishes it, but he sees it as a duty. Like, I have to do this. And it comes across in everything he does. And he's going to save America. And as I was saying before we started recording, America is going to save the West. America is going to lead the charge, the pathway, show us the way out of this. Because it is only with that brash, confrontational style against the satanic anti-humanists who are trying to take over the world that we get some normalcy back for our families and for our lives. So I just feel really happy about that. But in terms of England, it's a much bleaker proposition because we literally have a communist in charge. We had a high-profile journalist, Alison Pearson, who was I really like her a lot, and she was at our engagement party last night. Hence my slightly jaded look, I think you could probably see. And thank you, my.
Sorry, I was here
in Colombia.
Colombia.
Very nice. I like it. Colombia. It's very good. You're a good drug mule. Anyway, she had two coppers turn up to her house on Remembrance Sunday to question her over a tweet. These are policemen. And in our county, we share the same county. We live in the same county. 93% of car thefts are never solved in our county. But they can dedicate the police to turning up to your house to police your thinking. So we're headed for a technological war, aren't we? JD Vance put it very well when he was being interviewed the other day, and he said, "Well, if Europe want to shut down X, then I hope they don't miss us in NATO." You know, and I think America should punish Europe. I really think it's its duty to say, if you're going to behave like this, if you want to be censorious little communist bastards, then what we're going to do is we're going to punish you. So we're not going to provide you with support in NATO. I think the message was aimed actually much more at the UK than it was at anywhere else, which is that if you're going to continue to try and silence free speech, and you're going to try and shut down various points of view and live in the censorship industrial complex, then you're not going to have American support in NATO. And Trump's already said in his first term, as you know, whether it was a rhetorical question or not, he said, what is the point of NATO? And I think we're about to find out. Because this insane war in Ukraine, the forever war, is that it has to end. It has to stop. And Europe has to turn its back on communism. And if it doesn't, it will do eventually, because it always does. But it's a less, what I'm trying to sort of, in a roundabout, boring way to get to, is the fact that whilst my heart sings for America, my heart mourns for what's happening in our own country here. You know, we've got, we had a question in Parliament the other day about knowing, conveniently in this open border country that we live in, no one keeps tabs really of the ethnicity or of, or the background of anyone who commits crimes, their employment. And then suddenly these figures start leaking out that, 1 in 10, almost 9 in 10, I think, Somali migrants to the UK are on benefits. So they come here and we pay for them to come here. And then we find out that when they house these so-called refugees, they're not refugees at all, they're economic migrants. There was a complaint in Altrincham in the north of England. They said, well, you're putting 300 men, Muslim men, in a hotel within walking distance of 2 girls' schools. And they're upset about this, the parents, because we know what Muslim men are like with young girls. They like to marry them if they're 9 or thereabouts. And they complained about this, the local community. And the councillor who met them in the church hall while they complained said, "Yeah, what are you doing with 300 guys? What about local hospital surgeries and the schools?" And he said, "Oh, don't worry, they're going to get private medical care." So they come to the UK and they're being given private. We're treating migrants, illegal migrants who've broken into our country illegally, better than we treat our own citizens, and that's a very worrying sign. And we don't have a Trump on the horizon to solve this problem for us.
You say you don't have a Trump on the horizon, but you tweeted something this morning that I thought was very interesting. You tweeted that the woke house of cards is collapsing in the U.S. big time with this election. And that whatever the direction the U.S. goes, the UK inevitably follows. So you must feel some optimism that the same is going to happen in the UK.
We have this right of centre party reform. They are meant to be, the real conservatives is what they would label themselves as. And yet today, a left-wing Labour MP called Kim Ledbetter, who presided over the same constituency where a teacher was run out of town and is still in hiding for fear of his life for showing a picture of the Prophet Muhammad in a RE class on blasphemy. He was run out of town. She's the MP. She brought forth an assisted dying bill, and this party has just come out in support of it. And I'm sat there going, do you know what conservatism is? It means to conserve things, including life, not to assist people to die, not to do all these things. So we have this horrible obstacle, which is this political party, which with every passing moment, I start thinking has no idea what the challenge it needs to be faced is. So that part of it makes me feel a bit depressed. But other than that, America will lead the way. It always does. America left Britain to become America, and it then shows the rest of the world how to do it properly. And that's what's going to happen, whether you like it or not. And I'm trying to encourage the people that are in power here in contact with them to feel the wind in their sails, be bold, feel confident, and take on this agenda, because it's a movement, it's a cultural movement, and all aspects of it are relevant. So hopefully we'll see that happen. But I think we're behind you, because we had 14 years of fake conservatism, whereas you had pretty much, you had them try and kill Trump off between 16 and 20. And then you had somehow an election where 18 million people appeared from nowhere and voted for an old man. And then you've got Trump back now. So it'll be good. I can only see it getting better for the UK the more that America rejects the satanic evil of wokery. It's a very roundabout answer. I'm sorry.
No, well, listen, I think you're probably right about that. It's going to be very interesting, given Trump's appointments. Most of them, I would have to say that I agree with. Kristi Noem being named as the chief of the Department of Homeland Security is a bit of an odd one to me. Noem was she's South Dakota governor. If you're not familiar with her, she was someone that I took to be a very serious rising star in the Republican Party just a few short years ago. And then next thing you know, she's doing product placements for tooth whitening. I mean, while she's governor, and she had the incident where she shot her dog, and, included that in her book. And just a few other things that, plastic surgery and whatnot. She's a beautiful woman. She had no need of doing that, but just some very odd, kind of midlife crisis type things. But her choice of playing that role, arguably, is not the most important cabinet post, and certainly, in the top two. I'm not sure what to make of that one. Regardless, so far, I think that Trump is, he's hitting home runs. And what I like about it is that he's choosing people who are, for the most part, kind of outside the Washington Beltway. They're not career politicians. It's almost Ross Perot's dream come true, actually. I mean, say Musk to head the Department of Government Efficiency, as opposed to saying, yeah, Mitch McConnell will be the guy, that's the way it's generally worked, is you get another insider who's all part of the problem in the first place. And, the fox, as they say, guarding the hen house. So bringing in somebody like an Elon Musk, his role may be the role that I'm most excited about. I mean, I want to see him bring a saint, into DC, and to do to DC what he did to Twitter, reduce it from something like 7,000 employees to something like 300 employees, and to make taxes an optional $8 a month subscription. That's what I'm hoping.
To make what's an optional $8 thing? You break up, so.
To make taxes an $8 a month optional subscription. I think that would be great. If U.S. government ran on a subscription basis, that would be fabulous. And by the way, speaking of,
I get you. That's a brilliant idea. I have been sitting there looking at some of the policies that this bunch of criminals are in the UK keep lobbing out, and I am like, at what point are people going to stop paying taxes? It's ridiculous. It's unbelievable. But that's what a wonderful idea it would be if government was a subscription model. Well, my lord, I think you might have solved it.
Let's kill mother, euthanasia bill. Yeah, how many people have subscribed to it? Yeah, I'll subscribe to that. It had to run. Every government policy lived or died according to its popularity, and thus how many people subscribe to it. I think that'd be great. Taxation, you're speaking of America and, separating from Britain and establishing a new country on the basis of being, something that was just tweaking an old system, taking an established British system and tweaking it a bit. It's fascinating to me when I think about it that war, which was really a civil war, is British historian G.M. Trevelyan, has long since, argued, the late historian, It was the Civil War. It was the Second English Civil War rather than really a revolutionary war. But it was fought over taxation without representation. Imagine how that generation would have reacted if you'd have started lopping off the penises of their little boys. I mean, I just cannot imagine. But they were upset enough just over taxation to say, nope, war.
I love that, but that it shows that, we have no veneration for the past, do we? The only time we venerate the past is when we want to punish the present. We never venerate the past to look at the past and say, this, it's that when you become a cult and a religion of yourself and your own emotional life, which is essentially what wokery is, isn't it? It's that idea of it's the Jack Nicholson line from As Good as It Gets when he says, how do you write women so well? And he says, I just write a man and take away reason and accountability. It's like that. That's what wokeism is. It's, you take a normal human being and you take away reason and accountability, and everything becomes about the worship of the self and the worship of the virtue of the self. And it's so reductive and crap and shit way of living that you can't then look at history and with anything other than a sense of sort of snobbish bemusement that they managed to survive so that you could come along and well, not you, but one could come along and sort of judge it with very badly tinted glasses on. But this is what is needed. What is needed in the world is a sense of someone to say, we need to fight for this stuff now. And that's what's so inspiring about Trump. He's just, that he's going to do it. And I suppose where we were going in this conversation was me just feeling a bit sad that there doesn't seem to be a figure in UK politics who can smash through in that way, because everyone has to be very well behaved and say the right thing and assisted dying bill, yes, it's done carefully. It's like, no, just say no. We're not going to do that. We're not going to kill people. The business of government is not killing people. You do not make the business of government killing people. We've seen what happens when you let the government kill people. They kill people, lots of them. And I just long for a great British revival. But part of me is thinking, Lizzie's got an American passport. She's an American citizen. Jump on a plane and get out of this country, because it's just makes me too depressed sometimes too, and think about it. I mean, I'm in London today, so I'm extra double depressed, and I'm really hungover because we had our engagement party. So my extra levels of depression are there. But you look at this city, in this dirty, stinking city, like every leftist city in the world, and you just go, what's to become of all of this? What's to become of it? When is someone going to turn around and say, no, I want to be free to go where I want to go. I don't want to be fined for driving 1 mile an hour over 20 miles an hour. You can't drive 20 miles an hour in London. It's impossible to drive. I did it yesterday. I tried to drive at 20 miles an hour. You're going like this. You're more likely to run over a person at 20 than you are at 30. Why am I ranting? Sorry.
Thinking about the left being, unaccountable for anything, having no responsibility. Recently, I was driving, on one of our roads in the rural South, and I was behind a dump truck carrying gravel. And I don't know if you have this in the UK, but these trucks invariably have a little sign on the back that says not responsible for broken windshields. And I wonder if that's ever been legally tested. I'm carrying gravel, haven't properly loaded it or carried it, and it's coming out, dropping along the road, and it breaks your windshield. Hey, dude, not my fault. But to me, it's like the leftists all go around with that kind of sign on their back, not responsible for any damage I cause, not responsible for anything. Did I tell you that Lori and I, we hosted 3 Italian journalists recently?
No.
Yeah, this was just before the election. They've been following Trump all over the country. This is for TG2, I think, which is Italian public television. And they asked to interview me if they could come to my home and interview me. And they interviewed me in 2020. So they were really trying to get the perspective of red staters. But this will fascinate you. Or or it might be something that you go, okay, totally get it because it's like this in the UK. But they wanted to ask me about the Second Amendment. So here they are in my home. Okay. Nice people, by the way. Thoroughly enjoy them. And they see, you've been there, a gun rack with a couple of shotguns that, fully functional, but they're really classic, more display shotguns. You'll remember that old French one that I have, and then an old Spanish Union Armera shotgun that I have. And then they see another one, which is actually one's, has two shotguns that I actually use, for trap shooting and that sort of thing. And they're kind of fascinated by that. Like, wow, guns. And one of the ladies who afterwards, after the interview was over, we're having dinner and we're enjoying some beautiful Prosecco, which they had brought, nice Italian drink. And she wants to drill down a little bit more into my views on the Second Amendment. And I'm telling her, listen, the Second Amendment is absolutely critical for maintaining the First Amendment. So the Second Amendment, if you're not familiar with it, you're not from the United States, or you are from the United States and have gone to a public school. The Second Amendment is, of course, the right to bear arms, eliminating the Department of Education. And the First Amendment is free speech. And I tell her, listen, the Second Amendment is critical towards maintaining that. An armed population is incredibly important. And I was just trying to point out to her something you just brought up. Does it not strike you as a little bit odd that the very people who are pushing depopulation, abortion, the transing of children, euthanasia, are the same ones who claim to really want to eliminate guns for your safety? I mean, the anti-human crowd, are we really to believe that they really care about you so much? I mean, the answer to that is absolutely not. But here's the thing that kind of fascinated me. She's, the photographer who was himself in the Italian armed forces. So, here's a guy who understands weapons, gets it, not at all bothered by them. He said, hey, could you get one of them so that we could, take a couple pictures of it? I said, sure. And so I went and I got my AR-15, which in the minds of people who are sit on the political left, and I would call this woman a radical leftist or anything like that. I want to be very clear. She's a very nice woman. I had a lovely discussion with her on this. It was useful to me to kind of get another perspective. But when I brought it out and I'm holding it, barrel down, and it's obviously not loaded because I forget what you call it, but there's a little safety, a yellow safety plastic piece that you slide, into it in order to be able to visually see that it's not loaded. She recoils like I am, offering her, a freshly torn limb off of a child, or something. And she's just recoils at it. And I said, it won't hurt you. It won't hurt you. But her reaction to it was almost a childlike reaction. I mean, not a child in the American South would not respond that way to a weapon because they probably know how to handle it. But I thought, isn't this interesting? She's been so conditioned to the idea that only government, and that was really the source of our debate, that only government should have weapons, that only they are to be trusted. And she said, I'm really trying to understand your perspective. And I said, well, you need to understand that it is deeply seated in the American psyche is this idea that government is not to be trusted. And that we're of the view that weapons are better in the hands of just ordinary people. And she said, yeah, but won't people get hurt? And I said, unfortunately, yes. Yes, there will be people there will be accidents. There will be abuses of that freedom, but far less than if it's just the government, who has them. I said, every mass shooting, the greatest mass shootings in history were all committed by governments against unarmed people. But anyway, I was just thinking about this notion of, here I am holding it. And it's like I'm holding up a cross to Dracula. She's freaked out at the idea of even touching it. And that's conditioning, isn't it? The propaganda, flowing from media in Europe and in the United States, is the very idea that there's a weapon there. It's like everybody needs to back away from it and leave the room. It's a nuclear device that could go off at any second. So weird to me.
Yeah, I often think about how quickly guns were got rid of in the UK, and I think it does say something so wise about the founders, that they realised that free speech was so important that the only way that you must be able to defend it with lethal force. It's not just like, well, the Second Amendment is you're allowed to, that stupid argument that they have is like, no, they meant muskets, and you're just like, no, they meant lethal force. You're right to, that's what they meant. That's what a gun is, a weapon is. And how quickly we gave them up in the UK. And it is fascinating that this, in Australia as well, they had that big arms, either a buyback or a recall, I can't remember, but everyone just went along with it. You wonder to yourself how many, I sympathize with Yoko Ono and her, her husband was shot and by a crazed lunatic, and I can see why she puts that picture out every year of how many people die in gun-related incidents every year in America. But you also think that freedom has a price, right? And we have now in the UK, I got an email from the school. Lots of parents send me lots of things that their schools email them because they know that I'm one of the guys that just is completely all over how bad schools are here. And they were doing, I know they do this in America, it's quite common in America that they do lockdown drills, shutdown drills for what happens if, a shooter comes into the school and stuff like that. And it's sort of, it's good to teach kids, but we're now teaching kids in the UK these things as well, because they're worried about people coming in not with a gun, but with a machete and a knife and all of that sort of stuff. I think that an armed citizenry is a better, more responsible citizenry. And I think the citizens should be able to have guns. I do. And I think that natural innate distrust of the government is a wonderful thing, because it sort of goes back to what you were saying earlier, which is like, taxation should be a subscription model. It's like, so should government in a lot of ways. You should be able to choose how much you want to be involved or not involved in government, because it's the journalist who was visited by the police, she was tweeting something that she felt, she's a journalist, she's a very well-respected journalist in the United Kingdom. She's not an idiot. She doesn't deliberately inflame people to be visited by the police. If you were an armed citizen and this police car pulls out the bull and it's like, come out with your hands up. And it's like, what have I done? It's like, you tweeted. I'd be putting a round straight into the engine block of that police car and saying, go on your way, fellas, or I'd put two up in the air, go on your way. I'm allowed, this is my speech and I'm allowed it. So, it's interesting that is it. I can understand how it works, because until I started thinking about it, I thought, oh, it's really good that we don't have guns in the UK. So strange and backwards that the Americans have guns. But then for the minute you think about it, you go, it's absolutely necessary to prevent government tyranny. It's the only way to stop it, actually. They're not going to march on an entire people, and they've stolen one election. As we can see, they stole the last election. They just couldn't steal this one. And that would have been down to a feeling, and a proper feeling, that if they did, that something bad would happen, wouldn't there? But have you seen that movie Civil War, the Alex Garland film?
It didn't grab my attention. It felt like it was meant to stir division, so I steered clear of it. Is it worth watching?
No, it's not. It's really bad, because it's mainly about it's kind of about this issue. It basically says that, if division creates war and violence and people killing each other. But that is essentially what war is. And as you said, most of the mass shootings that have taken place in the world have been taking place by governments on innocent, unarmed people. And they're happening to this day, this very day. And those people that would recoil at the sight of your AR-15 are the people that would support those mass shootings because they were legitimate in some way to them. And I'm interested to know what, again, the fact that the virus that is socialism and that sort of thinking can't square the circle of going, well, I support this mass shooting, but I don't support this one. I don't understand why. I want to return to a world where all mass shootings are created equal, or not. So therefore we say, well, democracy has a price. And one of the prices of democracy is that you're going to have, very occasionally, you're going to have an insane, probably transgendered youth go and shoot up a Christian school. And the best thing to do is make sure that some of the teachers have got pistols in their desks. You know? I think the solution to the gun problem is give more guns to good people. That would be my view. And I wonder how many lives a year are saved by someone having a gun and ending a mass shooting event quickly like that. Do they have stats on that in America, or is it only the amount of people that are killed?
I'm sure there's some kind of statistical data on it, but I take Twain's view that there are lies, damn lies, and then there are statistics. But I'll say this. The woke house of cards collapsing in the United States, you think that'll eventually lead to, dynamic cultural change in Britain. I think you're right about that. But I'm also interested in what's going to happen on this continent here in South America, because what a lot of Americans don't realize, and I know because we travel internationally so much, is what we have seen taking place in the left throughout really the Western world, which is a fight of elitists versus populists. That is, people who are the self-appointed, self-anointed, enlightened against just common people. What we've seen in Britain and what we've seen in the United States is happening everywhere in the Western world, and usually via election shenanigans, very suspicious, elections, so that in just the last, I think, 3 years, on this continent in South America, we've seen Brazil fall in an election. Marxists took over that country in an election that seemed highly suspicious. Chile, the most stable democracy in South America, fell to Marxists. Colombia, in this country, that's the country where I am right now, which I know in the minds of most people who are watching, who are listening to us, they think of Pablo Escobar, which, by the way, I should say this is a tremendous opportunity for me to announce a new sponsor to WTF, and that's Escobar Cocaine. We grow, you sniff. They are new sponsors to the show. I've come here to cut it with them. And what do you know? They're for us. I do want to be careful what I say because I that are sponsors. But back in the 90s, in the era of Pablo Escobar, Medellin, Colombia, I think, had the highest per capita murder rate in the world. It is now one of the nicest and safest, at least in the cities in South America. And Colombia has been slowly but steadily climbing out of the mire of its own past, of its own backwardness. It's a dynamic, fascinating country, almost twice the size of Texas. People don't realize how huge Colombia is. And then all of a sudden, last year, you have an election in which an actual Marxist terrorist, a real terrorist, is somehow elected and takes over this country. The same has happened in Peru as well as in Honduras. And then, of course, Venezuela, which was at one time the wealthiest and still should be the wealthiest country in South America, is also controlled by Marxists. So I've been watching this process for a number of years now, and the CIA seems to have played a hand in almost all of these countries in what is taking place. And so I'm going to be very curious to see if the the woke house of cards collapses in Central and South America as well, because what has been happening on this continent is absolutely tragic, and it's what's led to the human tragedy of these migrants trying to make their way to the United States. Whereas I said last week, CNN says it's due to climate change. Not a thing to do with climate change. Has absolutely everything to do with Marxist policies that people on this continent are trying to escape.
What I find interesting is when you look at red state America and, my very small forays into it and, just driving around with you in Alabama and stuff like that. These are not rich places. There's not a lot of money in a lot of the places we went to. And those people lean populist. So what I don't understand is why poorer countries in South America, for example, when they're poor, they don't lean populist, they lean socialist. Or are you just saying that essentially these elections are completely rigged and there's interference from the globalists in order to try and make sure that, Lula gets in Brazil or whoever is taking over, whichever horrible, Venezuela, which, as you say, has got more oil than any other country on earth. Why did they not vote populist? Why would Alabama, every single county in Alabama, go red and not the other way around unless it's a rig?
I'm saying the latter. I'm saying that it's rigged, and these elections are very dubious. The means by which they are done, they are controlled by a kind of political mafia who all more or less support each other from one country to the next. So the previous president here in Colombia, he had the border closed, and he was trying his best, I think, in order to really try to improve this country's image, get the economy really rolling and moving. Some of the cities really becoming tourist destinations and places like that, seeking foreign investment in this country. There's been some very fascinating things that the Colombians have done to encourage investment here, that if you're an American, for instance, if you will invest, I think it's something like $150,000 in this country, they will fast track you to citizenship. Just little perks in order to get foreign investment. So I've had friends, who have bought, say, condos here because they're fairly cheap. You're on the beach. It's beautiful. Single men, are coming down here, looking for beautiful Colombian women. These kinds of properties are cheap versus, say, Europe or the United States. And, add to that, you get the benefit of Colombian citizenship. I mean, those are things like that I think are rather innovative efforts to attract investment. But now, with the election of a Marxist, you get the feeling that it's going to start heading, trending back in the direction where it was. And I mean, think about this. A country of this size, here I am in a beautiful city. Parts of it are not very safe at all, but parts of it are quite beautiful, wonderful restaurants. The Colombian people I really enjoy. Lori and I have enjoyed making many friends here over the course of the years. But tomorrow I'm flying into the jungle, into cartel country, and that's an area that you're talking about warring militias in addition to the Golfo cartel, where the federal government doesn't really even have control of an entire region of the country. I mean, from an American standpoint, that's kind of mind-blowing. Of course, I say that, and there's San Francisco. Oh, but parts of Portland, other left the cell holes. But anyway,
parts of so tomorrow you fly into cartel country, and your mission is, from as far as I can pick up, is you want to meet up with. You have already met up with some of the caravans, and you want to find out what's drawing people, get some stories of people that are trying to make their way to the land of the free. Is that your mission, to try and understand the journey?
That's part of it. On the surface, I'm following what they're doing. and getting a read on, how fast is this train still moving? I mean, post-election, what has been the effect here? Now, I discovered in Mexico City that a lot of those people are turning back. Some of the migrant camps that are around Mexico City are now by and large emptied because Trump was elected. Now, that surprised me because I assumed they would keep going right up until Trump's election, January 20th, 2025. But that's not the case. Most of them are already turning back. And it's because the process, it isn't as simple as just moving northward and then going across the Rio Grande. There's months of work, that goes into this, and some of them are using an app called the CBP-1 app, Customs Border Patrol app they're using to try to get appointments at the U.S. Embassy or consulate, and that could take a couple of years. So a lot of people who are seeking to do it through that process, they're just turning around and going home. But there's part of me that's wondered, is my sample size big enough? Is it that the migrant camps that I was going to in several countries here, Panama, Mexico City, Costa Rica, elsewhere, is it that the desertion of those camps, which is what I've discovered now post-election, they are deserted? Is that an indicator that people really are turning back in droves, or have the camps themselves just moved? So the way to really find the answer to that is to go to Necoclí. And Necoclí is in western Colombia, southwestern Colombia. It is the jumping off point. So where all the migrants gather who come from all over the continent. That's where they gather, and they wait to get a ferry. And they're really like these zodiacs that hold, say, 30 or 40 people to take a couple of hour long journey across the Gulf to the entrance to the Darien Gap. So they just dump them out there and they begin their journey. They begin walking, through Darien. So I've followed all of that in past, but I thought, while I'm here, I'm going to go down to Necoclí again, because if Necoclí is deserted, that's an indication that they are turning back. And it's worth pointing out here, Laza, that this is all about simple messaging. Your country, my country, France. If it is, as I think, that people are turning back, is just due to the message that ripples through these caravans that he's closing the border, or, hey, we're not welcome anymore, or, hey, the new border czar is a guy who is going to mass deport people. Just that simple messaging changes the migrant crisis hugely without even building a wall. Doesn't mean some of them aren't, but it makes a big difference.
Of course, because psychologically it's so damaging to go, you're putting your life in absolute, complete peril to go through. You've explained the Darien Gap to us a few times on this, and to me, and these journeys. The thought of not being able to, for it to be a futile journey, for you to give up all of that, and for the end, for you just to be turned around and put back, must be a big demoralizing factor. And I suppose I do struggle with this a bit, because I do think that if someone wants to move somewhere, then they should be able to. I'd love to move to America. I really would. But I think you should do it legally. That's the thing that I would say. But yeah, I think the idea of this, I mean, he's a serious dude. What's his name? Noonan. Is that his name? Am I getting it right?
It's gone completely out of my head.
Yeah. But he that message, it is important. And it's also important for cultures. It's the same as Elon Musk talks about the majority of the world is going to be powered by solar soon. He says it a lot. And I'm like, I agree with you. I'm sure it will. Once the technology is there and it's easy and it's accessible, and we can have, as his description of saying you wouldn't have a gas-powered mobile phone, that's the way he looks at the world, and I actually will take his word for it. But it's the forcing that I have a problem with, like the forced immigration and the forced net zero, the forcing of the changing the way one lives at a rate. Well, they call themselves progressives, right? So at a rate which is much quicker than possibly is wise. And at every point you need a check and a balance. And this arrival of Trump, he's coming with principles. That's what he's coming. And I think the whole world is going to have to listen to him. And I think he probably will be the most important president since Reagan by a long shot. You know, just because the world, whatever this thing that we're talking into now, and the ability to share information. I was speaking to someone in the government the other day, and I said, are you seeing this rise in ethno-nationalism? And they said, no, it's not so much a rise in ethno-nationalism. It's the algorithm picking it up and connecting them. So in the same way that the trans madness was picked up by the algorithm, and it put people who never would have met each other before together and emboldened them to bring their insane demonic ideology forward, feeling that they had a big group with them. What Trump is doing is he's reversing it entirely. He's taking us back to pre-mobile phone world. That's what he is. He's turning around and he's saying, no, we're going to work from common sense now. We're not going to be bullied and tormented and have our children abused by radical groups of perverts and autogynophiles. Done. Don't care what social media says about it. You'll go to jail. If you come into this country illegally, you'll go home. I don't care. You'll go home. We're not going to rejig the terminology of what it is, your reason for coming to America. If you want to come to America, go to this first port of call, safe port, and ask for citizenship. Apply to become an American. Yeah, I think it's a sort of it's a massive return to the analog way of doing things. That the way that computer games used to load up very slowly when you first started it, and those early computers. You remember how long it took to do everything, dial up internet. That's what he's saying. He's going, you can have this crazy world out there, and that's fine. And what Elon Musk is going to make sure that it's as safe as it can be, because everyone can say what they want. So we're going to keep the First Amendment on Twitter. But the rest of life, we're now going to go through. We're going to use logic, reason, common sense, and what's worked before. And that's what I sense that he's saying. And the guy it's amazing. It's great to think that these people aren't going to form huge. I feel for the people that die in the Channel, the people that get on boats to come to England for this, to dive into our welfare state and start, eating the juiciest fruit off the tree while the people of your own country starve. It's got to stop. The madness has got to stop, and the person who does that has got to be very firm in order to do it, and that's what he is.
Well, see, this is kind of the point I'm wanting to make and drive home with people in coming to this continent, is that the left, global left, they're all like this. They pretend that they care about people, but they really don't. This is making cynical use of very desperate people all around the world and declaring, our countries are available, open. Come on, we'll give you everything. And in some cases, those who make it, they really do follow through with that. But that's not because they care about them. It's because they hate their own citizens, and because they want to use these people to create a permanent ruling class. And what is happening here is far worse. Crossing the English Channel, I mean, there have been people known to be able to swim that. But when you're talking about going, say, from Venezuela through the troches, as they're called, the illegal pathways, making your way across Colombia, being in a cartel town where you're waiting to have roughly $150 per head to pay the cartel who runs these ferries to take you over to Darien Gap and dump you out, then go through Darien, through which there's no road. It's the most dangerous jungle in the world, and is full of every kind of predator, both man and beast, every kind of pestilence. It's mountainous. People are being given Red Bulls, and they're taking these things, and they're dying of heart attacks. The bodies are being taken off, hidden in the jungle because it's bad marketing. Women are being raped, oftentimes, multiple times. I don't know if you saw this video that I just posted of a woman that I was interviewing just north of Mexico City, a couple of hours, where she was waiting for La Bestia, the train that they call the Beast, or in some cases, the train of death. It's a train that runs more or less the length of Mexico, and it goes to the U.S. border. And so these people, they wait for it. They wait for La Bestia, and they get on top of it. Thousands of them just all along the top of it, and they make the journey northward, and they're exposed to, all of the elements along the way. So here she is, and she's 8.5 months pregnant. 8.5 months pregnant, and she already had 2, maybe 3 small children. I didn't get a full count on the number of children. And there she was with her mother, who's 38. Just 38, which tells you how young she was. Again, she was 20, but if you'd have seen her, Laza, you would have said she was 15 at most. And she's sweet. She spoke excellent English. And here I am, chatting with her about her plan. And she's from Venezuela. She made her way across Colombia. She went to Nicoclí, and I'd mentioned to her that I knew Nicoclí, and she was shocked when I told her I'd been there and into Darien. And I said, "How did you cross on those ferries? Where'd you get the money for that? I mean, $150 each." And she became a little sheepish, and she said, "We didn't have to pay." Now, I will tell you, Laza, the cartels are not an NGO. They are not running a charity. They don't do things for free. And in my mind, it made me wonder, was she raped? Did they require some kind of sexual favors, possibly involving children? I mean, who knows? I mean, this is what it's like tomorrow. It's the kind of place where you're walking along and women are touching you and giving you eyes, not because they love you or think you're handsome, but they just by looking at you, they can tell you're a Westerner, and they're desperate, and they're hoping to exchange sex with you in order to get the hard currency they need to make it across there. And so here's this young woman who, as we speak, she's on top of that train somewhere with her little kids. People are murdered on that train. They're thrown off of that train. And I want to say this, not because I've actually debated whether I should say this, because you want your alms, you want your giving to be in private. And so I don't say this to say what a wonderful person that I am, but in each instance, what we try to do for these people is we try to help them. And there's another reason I probably don't like saying that, and that's because my work in this area pisses off everybody, both on the right and left. And it's because people on the right will say, "You're helping them. Come to the United States. You shouldn't feed them. You shouldn't help them. You're helping them," which is sheer nonsense. You're just trying to help a human being who's starving. Most of the people I know who would even say things like that, if they were with me, they would have been looking around in their pockets for anything they could to help these people who are so desperate. And of course, people on the left don't like my work here because while I feel compassion for these people and I want to help them, I want a strong border. I want to.
You're framing that you're framing the, I can see it's a difficult position to be in, but listening to you talk about it makes me think that, you're framing the story in a way that no one will frame the story. It's framed like, these people are desperate to start a new life in America, and, the land of the home, the free, and America is a country of immigrants, and, we've got to celebrate they sort of lionize this journey as this great thing to end up at heaven. But what you're saying is it's a factory of death from the minute you make the decision. And that's the story that really needs to be told, because it is that. And, the trading in the sanctity of human life is about as dark as it gets. And it's no accident that I can't even remember what the number is, but it would make me sob when they talked about the number of children who have just vanished.
Million.
I'm just...
I would say it's far more than the thing here, I really appreciated this. A friend of mine, when I posted that video of this woman, I had a lot of people come into the comments and saying, tell her to go home, and this kind of thing. I had a friend who texted me and he said, "You're humanizing the immigration story. You're humanizing it." And I'm trying to do that because, again, I believe two things are true at once here. One is I want borders that are protected with machine guns if necessary. I want to send a very strong message. You do not cross our borders unless you have done so through a process whereby you are vetted. We're not letting criminals in the country, cartel members, fentanyl, all that kind of stuff. On the other hand, it's also true that we should show compassion to these people and help them stay in their own country. If you watch this video with this woman, she says she wants to be in Venezuela. I said, what do you think about Trump's election? She said, I think it's a good thing. I mean, that really surprised me. I said, why? She said, because I hope he can topple Maduro and restore Venezuela to what it was, because she said, I want to live in Venezuela. Most of these people want to be in their home country, but it's just not possible for them. So on the one hand, the left has created the wildfire, so to speak, the famine that has driven these people from their homes. And then they're saying, come to America, but they don't care what happens to them in between, which is, I mean, I'm talking to people who have been attacked by jaguars. I'm talking to one woman who was raped 3 times. Almost certainly this Venezuelan woman was raped. I mean, there's no, and people whose children have just disappeared. I remember one group of people telling me that when they were coming through on Darien, they're indigenous people in there. And they just come and say, we're taking this child and that girl. And this one guy said, no, you can't have him. And they just shot him right in the head. He fell to the ground. And he said, anybody else? And then they took the kids and left. There's no Columbo, there's no Inspector Lewis, no Sergeant Detective Hathaway who is coming for you. You are just lost forever because there's no record of you having existed in these places. And in some cases, no record of them having existed at all. I was talking to one guy from Ecuador who said he was, one of the indigenous people from the mountains. And he says, I have zero paperwork of any kind, no birth certificate, no driver's license, no nothing. He says, like I never existed because I was born in a remote village. And he says, without any of that kind of paperwork, I can't get, anything else like a passport or you name it. So this is the kind of stuff that I'm seeing. And what I wanted to say about this girl, and this cost me very little, but Laz, I've seen this 100 times. The reaction is almost always the same. After I was finished talking to her, I asked her, how are you feeding your kids? She said, we sell candy. I said, so you're selling candy every day, like a nickel a piece or something, and then you take that and try to go buy food. And she said, yes. And so I took her around to, what we call in America, a convenience store. And I said, get some food. So she very humbly, I could have cried, she took some crackers and put them on the counter. And I said, no, mucho más, a lot more, get a lot more food. Some lunch meat and some cheese. I said, that stuff's not going to keep on the train. You need some stuff for the train. Whichever direction you go, back to your country, if you're still heading north, you need more. So I told her to get some canned goods. So she got lots of canned goods and 2 grocery bags full of food. And I was feeling her out of my pockets, and I found had a little bit of cash, and I gave it to her. Laza, she burst into tears, and she threw her arms around me and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. The American people, the British people, are generally a kindly people, a generous people. I don't think we're hostile to people who are coming from, socialist, tyrannical shitholes. But Britain and America, we cannot be home to the entire world. And what that means is we will save ourselves a lot of trouble and a lot of money if we help these people to stay in their own countries, or in some cases to stay in the countries in between. Some of them are settling in, let's say, Panama or Costa Rica or Mexico, but our border must be closed. So I think those two things are true. You don't have to hate the immigrants. And I'm not talking about the violent criminals. I'm not talking about the cartels. I'm not talking about, say, Chinese or Russian military types coming across the border. The fact is, the Biden administration, the Biden-Harris administration, has been running a massive human trafficking op. And it has created a massive human crisis, a human tragedy. And it is not their fault, because they have been promised yeah, as you put it, the Magic Kingdom. And it's what set these people on their journey in the first place. And I'm so thrilled that just the messaging that Trump is putting out right now, which is, and did throughout the entire campaign, which is very firm about the border and very firm about deportations, that has already rippled through these caravans. So that many of them are going, maybe we need to turn back. And I want to add this. I think it's fascinating that Trump carried, while running a campaign like that, running with a platform of mass deportation, he carried the Hispanic vote.
Yeah.
In City, I was just in Mexico City, and in Mexico City, a number of Mexicans were saying to me, I can't understand what those people are thinking. And I said, well, sure you do. Think about it. They're not illegal. Those Hispanics are not illegal, and they don't want to compete with that. And by the way, most Mexicans are not aware, because many of them, at least the more urbane, the wealthy Mexicans, sort of, they tend to side with the American left. And they think it's terrible that the United States has closed their border. They're not aware what's happening on their own southern border, where they're trying to keep people out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're effectively the same thing. They don't want those migrants in their own country. They keep saying to them, that way, America's that way. Keep going. Get out of our country.
Yeah. It's amazing. The framing is entirely wrong. It's rotten from the very top to the very bottom, that ideology. And I'm so looking forward to seeing it begin to be dismantled. And I pray that you have a safe journey to, where are you going, to the southwest of Colombia? What's it called?
It is called Nicocli. N-A-C-O-C-L-I. Nicocli. Interesting, Laza. Nicocli was like the Fort Lauderdale of Colombia at one point. Now it's a cartel town. And this is where these people, it's almost like Casablanca, where, the opening dialogue says people gather there and they're waiting and waiting and waiting. They're waiting catch a ferry in order to leave there, and they all gather there while they make enough money, either begging, borrowing, or stealing, or selling themselves to pay for these ferries to go across the Gulf to the entrance of Darien Gap.
Wow. And I want to do that trip with you one day. I would love to do that trip with you one day.
They'd enjoy you down here. So there's a lot. By the way, Colombia, I'd encourage people to come here. It's a wonderful place for a vacation. I mean, it really has its nice places. So I sound like it's all Pablo Escobar. I mean, you see this here, this spectacular, but parts of this country are extremely dangerous. And I'm afraid it's just going to get worse with this new president, but we shall see. But if you don't hear from me, please send a search party.
We will. God, don't be like that. I've already got enough to not sleep about. Larry, it's a pleasure speaking to you, and it's amazing to hear this. Just to hear, it's just incredible to get all of the detail, the stuff that people just don't get. So thank you for giving it to us, and stay safe. And I will check in with you tomorrow. Then now I'll make sure that you're all right, because I'm sure you're a tough man, but I now feel anxious. But you're really good.
Brother, it's good to see you. Listen, you take care of yourself. Congratulations on that engagement party. I'm sorry that Lori and I couldn't make it, but just know that we send you a great WTF. Congratulations.
Thank you, my brother. God bless you.
And this has been another episode of WTF. What the Taunton and Fox is going on in the crazy world.
God bless the USA.